Hello, welcome to another Becoming a Modern Man. We are playing Grixis Death Shadow once again, and this time we are playing against Bogles deck. Excuse the fireworks if you can hear them in the background. It's the 4th of November and people appear to be celebrating Bonfire Night early around me. So apologise for that if you can hear all that in the background. Let's get underway with the game. This is our opening hand. We've got Polluted Delta, Island, Thoughtscour, Inquisition, Fatal Push, a Snapcaster and a Death Shadow. So yeah, pretty good. It's got a bit of everything in this hand. We've got some draw, we've got some hand disruption, we've got removal, and then we've got some creatures and obviously our top end threat in the form of Death Shadow. So it's all looking pretty nice. We're on the draw, and our opponent's going to lead off with a Temple Garden into a Slippery Boggle. We're going to run out with our Delta, get Watery Grave, and see what our opponent's working with an Inquisition. Which is probably one of our best ways to deal with the auras he has. So this is our opponent's hand. It's not the most impressive, which obviously is good for us. So we've got a Spirit Dancer, Path to Exile, and a Spider Umbra. We've got Fatal Push to deal with Spirit Dancer, so we're not too concerned about that. Spider Umbra we could take, but it's like not the scariest aura our opponent could have. So I'm not overly keen on taking that. So I think we're just going to take the Path to Exile to protect our Death Shadow. Bogles deck very light on removal generally, so hopefully that should be enough to protect our Death Shadow for the future. Got the Spider Umbra and the Flooded Strand, and attacks for 2. Draw into a second Death Shadow, which will be fairly useful once it comes down. I'm going to play the Blood Crypt untapped just to sort of power up these Death Shadows a little bit more. Probably Daybreak Coronet, which definitely isn't a card we wanted to see here. Definitely some bad news for us. So, opponent's taxes for 5 with lifelink. We draw a third Death Shadow, so we've got plenty of Death Shadows, plenty of threats. But I actually think the better play here is to Snapcaster Inquisition and just see what our opponent's working with. We know there's a core Spirit Dancer in his hand at the very least, so we're definitely not going to whiff. And it's possible that there might be an aura that we want to take off our opponent here. So yeah, our opponent reveals Spirit Dancer and a second Coronet. That second Coronet would definitely finish us off, or almost certainly anyway. So I'm going to have to take that and leave the Spirit Dancer with our opponent. Again, we've got an answer for the Spirit Dancer, so it's not the end of the world. And currently our opponent doesn't have Trample or anything, so we can look at chump blocking here, depending on what our opponent does play. So he drops a Spirit Dancer, attacks for 5. I think about the chump block, but in the end, I think I second guess myself. I think taking 5, it's not going to kill us, and it's also going to make our Death Shadows substantially bigger. So Fatal Push the Spirit Dancer here, play out a 10-10 Death Shadow, but as it turns out our opponent's draw is a Spirit Mantle, which gives him protection from creatures, so he can hit in for 6 and finishes off. So yeah, I guess maybe we should have taken that chump block after all, but it would have been fairly difficult to come back, I guess, from this point, particularly given our opponent had lifelink. So yeah, I'm not really sure what we could have done differently to win this game. It kind of worked out not very well for us. Our hand disruption missed the key cards, particularly the Daybreak Coronet, unfortunately, and then he kind of took over the game a little bit too quickly for us, and our threats came down a little bit too late. If it hadn't been for the Spirit Mantle, though, I think we would have been in pretty good shape. we could have played another Death Shadow and another Death Shadow, and then started attacking through our opponent's Boggle, which would have worked out fairly well. So yeah, kind of a shame that that came down, because otherwise we would have been in fairly good shape. So on to game 2. Okay, so this is our opener. So obviously slightly awkward, it's a 1 lander, but we have got a couple of draw spells. We've also got a Street Wraith, which will draw as a card. And actually between Polluted Delta, Street Wraith and Thought Scour, we can make sure we get a turn 2 Tasigur. Very keen to get early threats on the board and put a lot of pressure on our opponent as much as possible, so that they're not aggroing us too much. So I actually like this hand, despite it only having 1 land. So we cycle the Street Wraith, find another Stubborn Denial, we bring additional copies in from the sideboard here. Kind of a tricky deck to play against Bogles, but obviously Liliana of the Veil, very good. And Stubborn Denial is a way to counter auras potentially. So our opponent just leads with a Plains, doesn't have anything to play on turn 1, which is obviously very good for us. Not seeing any Hexproof guys at this moment in time. Thought Scour. So now we've got 5 cards in the graveyard, so we can play that turn 2 Tasigur. And we also draw a Street Wraith, so we're just going to cycle that as well to get an extra card. That finds us a Serum Visions, and we find our second land, which is really good for us. So just going to delve into a Tasigur here. One place to Path to Exile, but we've kept the mana up for Stubborn Denial rather than going for a Serum Visions there to help protect the Tasigur. So that's fine by us. Opponent plays a Boggle, but no follow-up, so he doesn't look like he's got a 1 mana enchantment, or he doesn't have a 1 mana white enchantment anyway. So that's obviously very good for us. And yeah, it seems like our opponent might be struggling on colours of mana, I guess, or just lands in general. Might have been a problem in our opponent's opening hand. So that definitely works in our favour. We Serum Visions there, sorry, I clicked through that a little bit too quickly. But we find a Liliana, which obviously is great. One of the best cards in this matchup, really. So hopefully our opponent will just stick a load of auras on his Boggle, and we'll be able to get it. He plays Spirit Dancer, which isn't great. It's going to allow him to draw a card. He's only able to play 1 aura here, which is the Spider Umbra. So we draw the Liliana. We're going to crack Bloodstained Mire here now, and just kill off the Spirit Dancer. We don't want him drawing any more cards off the Spirit Dancer if possible, so I think it's a good way to kill him off, and then we'll also take an extra card out of his hand, so he has fewer auras here, or potential auras to play. No, it turns out the other card he discarded was a Glade Cover Scout. So, end up attacking here. I actually think, in hindsight, that was a bad idea, because an aura of any kind, really, plus Daybreak Coronet, is likely to be enough to kill us. We're only on 7 here, so I ended up, I think he plays Rancor, and if his other card had been Daybreak Coronet, that would have finished us off. So we ran it a little bit risky there. Didn't really need to, particularly given that we know that we've got Liliana coming down. So I think we should have probably just held back and, well, I imagine our opponent wouldn't have attacked in the circumstances, but had he drawn the Daybreak Coronet to go with that, then it probably would have been a good idea to keep back Tasigur. As it turns out, our opponent only had a Rancor. I assume his other card was probably a land of some description, or maybe a green spell, given that he seems to have had slight mana troubles. But yeah, we end up sticking Liliana and -2ing it, which kills off the Boggle, and our opponent concedes to that. So yeah, worked out fairly well, and yeah, but for that attack with Tataga, I think played it fairly well. So yeah, that works out. So let's move on to game 3, which turned out to be quite the spicy one. So this is our opening hand, obviously lacking a threat, but we do have Serum Visions and the Street Wraith, so we are going to be able to draw a few cards. Fatal Push, obviously not his very best, but it can kill off the Spirit Dancer. Not sure if he's running Dryad Arbor as well. That's another card that potentially he could have in his deck, which would be a problem for us. And which Fatal Push obviously answers. Opponent leads off with a Gladecover Scout. We're going to crack this Polluted Delta for a Watery Grave. And I think we're going to Thoughtseize here. So yeah, we Thoughtseize and we see Path to Exile, Slippery Boggle, 2 Core Spirit Dancers. We don't have any threats at the moment, so taking Path to Exile seems kind of unnecessary. Spirit Dancer obviously going to be a problem. He hasn't got any auras, so that's obviously good for us, but at the same time, Spirit Dancer could draw him a lot of cards very quickly, so I think I'm going to take one of the Spirit Dancers, and then maybe we'll... then we can Fatal Push the second one, potentially. So opponent just plays a Slippery Boggle on his turn. So we'll try and keep up with what was in hand. So Windswept Heath, Slippery Boggle, so opponent's got Path and a Spirit Dancer that we know about. Crack a Bloodstone Mire here. Get another blue source, and then we can Serum Visions. Okay, and yeah, this is pretty nice. So I think we're going to bottom the Stubborn Denial, but Kozilek's Return is very good here, given that our opponent hasn't really got anything going on in the way of auras, so we're going to be able to wipe out his creatures. So definitely putting that on top, and I think we bottom the Stubborn Denial, as I say. And we're going to Inquisition, get to see our opponent's hand, which is now Core Spirit Dancer, Daybreak Coronet, and Path to Exile. Just going to take the second Spirit Dancer. I suppose I didn't have to. I could have just left it and taken the Path instead. Because obviously Daybreak Coronet not working out unless he draws another aura. So it doesn't seem like the most sensible thing to do to take that. So yeah, it's kind of between Path and Spirit Dancer there. I quite like taking Spirit Dancer because he's kind of drawing awkwardly, and I think that probably favours us just to prevent him from drawing any additional cards. I'm going to take 2 here down to 9. We draw into the Kozilek's Return. And I don't know, I tried to be maybe a bit too smart here. I've decided not to go for the Kozilek's Return. Obviously it's instant speed, so ideally I want to try and get him to try and play some auras on his creatures, and then we can respond with the Kozilek's Return to kill off his guys. Run to another Street Wraith. These end up sort of clogging in my hand. I don't know if I maybe should have cycled them earlier or what have you, but by this point in the game we've got down to quite a low life total, so it's kind of not worth the risk. So at 5 I think that it's time to pull the trigger on this Kozilek's Return, and it turns out that our opponent runs Stubborn Denial, which it's not something I've actually seen before in Bogles, but yeah, it looks like he splashes blue for Stubborn Denial, which is definitely interesting. And very inconvenient for us on this occasion, because it's not even a ferocious Stubborn Denial, it's just that we can't pay the 1, so it's just a 4 spike, but there's nothing we can do about it, unfortunately. So it's not the end of the game, unfortunately, but that's definitely not good for us. Going to play Liliana and kill off one of his dudes. Going down to 1 loyalty on the Liliana. He's going to kill it off with the Boggle here. Draw Angler, which is obviously good for us. Sorry, I sped through that again. I think Serum Visions, it doesn't look like it found us anything of interest, unfortunately. So I'm going to Angler here. I think I spent a long time doing this because I kept misclicking things. I definitely wanted Kozilek's Return to stay in the graveyard for potentially Snapcastering it back later on. Because just that would be another answer to this this Boggle if he doesn't put too many auras on it. So we see the path. We thought Scour in response just in case we managed to draw into a Stubborn Denial. Opponent attacks us for 1. We're going to 2 here. We draw another Death Shadow, so that's very good for us. We can drop 2 11/11s here. And our opponent is going to drop another Glade Cover Scout. So I crack the fetch there and go for a land. It's kind of questionable whether that was the right decision or not. My intention was to basically play a Street Wraith, so I can attack, I guess, with both my creatures, and he's forced to block 1, and then we've got... Well, actually, that doesn't work either. So yeah, I think my intention was just to play the Street Wraith, keep my 3 guys back, and then play a second Street Wraith. I was kind of keen to play these, but I think maybe in hindsight that was a bad idea. Fortunately, it all kind of works out because I end up drawing a Snapcaster after cracking that fetch, which is a lot better play. So we can Snapcaster here, flashing back Kozilek's Return as we had envisioned previously, and that will wipe our opponent's board and wipe our Snapcaster, but allows us to attack for lethal here. Opponent has a Path to Exile, unfortunately for us, so that'll let us get the last basic out of our hand, and our opponent goes down to 4. Opponent draws a second Path to Exile, well, third of the game, surprisingly enough. So yeah, so I mean, our opponent's draw is kind of ridiculous. He's gone through 3, 4, 5, 6. So he's drawn 6 creatures when his deck has 12 creatures tops, I imagine, in his deck. And he's drawn 3 Path to Exile, which is basically the whole sum of his removal. So yeah, drawn 3/4 of his removal spells and half of his creatures, and no auras as far as I can tell. He's still got that Daybreak Coronet stuck in his hand that he's never had a chance to use. So really, really bizarre game. We are now playing and attacking with Street Wraiths to finish off the game. And yeah, we play the second one there just in case our opponent draws that 4th removal spell. And yeah, that finishes our opponent off. So yeah, really tight game. Probably didn't play it very, I think we made quite a few mistakes, but ended up going in our favour. And yeah, very bizarre game. Like I say, our opponent drew like half of his creatures and almost no auras throughout the whole game. And yeah, Kozilek's Return did a ton of work for us in clearing out his creatures, given that they never really got to grow in size. But yeah, very tight one, very much down to the wire, and probably a few mistakes on my end in terms of managing my life total. But worked out in the end, and we managed to pick up the win.